What's up, everybody? I am here today doing the ranking list with special guest Brian LCS. You may know him from Instagram and from the CBC Awards and everything that's going on in the comic book world. Brian, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. We used to be neighbors basically, and then you moved. So,
Yeah,
but
that's it. I got out of town.
yeah, it's all right. Hey, um, so as you guys know, we make our lists. We do an honorable mention. We count down from 10 to 1, 1 being our favorite. We are going to do Spider-Man villains, as you can see in the ticker below, and we'll go back to back. I'm really excited for this one, Brian, because this is the first one for me where Spider-Man villains come from all over the place, like comic books, TV shows, movies. It's a lot different than everything else I've done in the show so far. So it's cool that we're going to have a really wide selection. I know you read Spider-Man like religiously. I was never a big Spider-Man reader, but I've seen it all. So very excited to see how different our lists are, or if we have the same villains and why.
Yeah, very. He's got a rogues gallery, right? It's kind of like Batman, where there's so many villains in Spider-Man's history. So I
Yeah.
was I was having a tough time with my list. Like
Uh-huh.
it flipped back and forth a few times.
Yeah. So I always ask everybody when we start, how big was your list at the start to get it down to 11?
I kept changing it. So it was like, how do there were people I added and then took out. And so, yeah, it was probably like 15 to 20 and
Okay.
then narrowed it down to 11, 10 and an honorable mention. So,
Awesome. Yeah, I ended up with like 22, but I was able to eliminate a handful of them pretty quick. Like I knew my top 3 or 4 right away, and then like you said, it was kind of just moving the rest of them around and in the correct place that I felt that they deserved on my list and with my heart. So, as always, you guys, I'm going to kick it off and give us the comments, let us know how we're doing, if we're doing bad, if you like our list, if you hate our list. And me and Brian are just going to bounce back and forth for about an hour. So starting with the honorable mention, my first honorable mention is The Punisher. I love The Punisher. I have only read the facsimile issue of Spider-Man where it's him on the cover in the sights of the
okay.
sniper.
Yeah. 129. Yeah. Okay.
Outside of that, though, for me, like I grew up with the Amazing Spider-Man show, which kind of like went back to backish with Batman the Animated Series. They were like the two big cartoons for us growing up as superheroes at my age. And the Punisher wasn't really in that for very much, but I just love Frank Castle. I've always thought that he's a great villain slash anti-hero, whatever one you want to call him. But for me, it's the Punisher. Again, in that issue, I remember he was going after Spider-Man. I don't remember why or who he was working for, but overall, I still just thought the whole thing was really cool. And I was like, was that the introduction of the Punisher? Does he come
Yeah.
introduced in
Yeah.
this?
That's the first appearance.
Oh
Yeah.
wow! See, I didn't even know that. So that's what I mean, you guys. Like, I'm not big into the comic book side of Spider-Man, but that's cool that worked out that way. I had no idea. So that's honorable mention number 1 for me. Good old Frank Castle, the Punisher.
That's a good one. I didn't. So spoiler, I don't even have Punisher on my list. So I went more like older, like Spidey's classic or older villains. But my honorable mention is going to be the Vulture. And now this is one I flip back and forth because kind of thinking of his Spidey's new, or like I said, his oldest villains. I kind of went with that theme throughout my list. And the Vulture to me is more like he's like just your average guy who's got a little technology. He can fly. He doesn't really have any superpowers, and he's a thief. He's basically, he robs things, he steals things, and it was kind of street level Spidey. So that's why I have him at my my honorable mention is the Vulture.
Good pick. It's cool that you said it as like a street level Spidey because especially in one of the more recent movies in Brand New Day, for example, they talk about like Homecoming. They talk about like Tony Stark tells him do your how does he say it? He's like work on your lower level things first.
Right.
And then in
Right.
Homecoming, the villain was the Vulture. And I was like, oh, that's actually really cool that you just kind of full circled it. It's also cool to see the evolution of the Vulture because in the comic books, he was in that basic green suit with the white feathers and he had the wings. And then who was the actor?
It was
Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton. Yeah. Yeah.
Had like that whole done up techno Vulture, so it's a cool change of pace for sure. My number 10. My number 10 is Doc Ock. I feel like I'm disrespecting him, keeping him this low on the list at number 10. But to be honest, as I get more into it, I think that it'll make sense for my reasoning and everything. So Doc Ock for me came in, same thing in The Amazing Spider-Man and in the Spider-Man 2 movie, obviously, the Alfred Molina role, which was
Right.
fantastic. And Doc Ock I like a lot because he's one of those villains, and this happens a lot with villains, is he's one of those guys who's like really a good guy deep down at heart, and then he just can't handle it. You know, like everything happens to him in the movie, and it goes down the same way in the animated series, I believe. And it's the same thing, like the level up change of what they looked like. So in the animated series, he had the same claws, but he had like this orange jumpsuit with these yellow, like almost like sweater looking sleeves and stuff on it. It was pretty cool compared to the Alfred Molina thing, who had the glasses, which were perfect, the small specs, and the big overcoat. I always really liked that look. I also always really liked in Brand New Day, I'm sorry, not in Brand New Day, in No Way Home, the turn of Alfred Molina in that movie, where in the end he kind of finally saves Peter a little bit, but he still does it to be a villain, which I thought was really funny. So,
Right.
And it's cool that in Spider-Man 2, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man looks up to Alfred Molina in the beginning of the movie and then realizes like, oh, I got to fight this guy now. So,
Right. Yeah, really smart guy, scientist, smart guy, but then just
yep,
little evil streak.
Yep. Who's your number 10?
My number 10 is, and this was a one that I went back and forth again on, is Sandman. Again, kind of a classic, tragic story, right? He, an accident that caused him to, transform into the Sandman. But again, just one of those guys that, now has superpowers, but he's got to figure out, Spider-Man's got to figure out a way how to deal with, those type of powers, being able to transform into sand and be able to use the ground and sand around him, things like that. So, and then Spider-Man quickly realized he could use, water to cause Sandman some problems. So, but just one of those classic, the green sweater, and like he's a pretty standard, looking, villain, just like he's got, pants and a green sweater, but who he is. Like,
yeah, he's like a regular guy walking on the street, which is kind of what happens. Because I don't remember him in the comics at all, but in Spider-Man 3, I remember like he chooses to just rob that bank as Sandman. And I'm like, oh, because that's when he like takes Aunt May and stuff too. So Sandman is a great character. I think the coolest part about Sandman is, and it's the same concept, is like the amount of ways he can change the size of himself in Spider-Man 3. The way he beats down on Peter on like the beam in Spider-Man 3, I was like, is this guy about to die? Like, this is bad.
Yeah.
And then the funny moments of him in No Way Home I thought were great. And then I think it was Spider-Man 2, the video game that recently came out, or within the last couple of years. The opening part of the game is like the whole city is wrapped in a sandstorm, and it's really cool because you've got to get close enough to him.
That's right. Yeah. I forgot.
Yeah, the opening scene is sick. So good choice. I don't think Sandman didn't make my list, so good pick. So far, it's two different people. My number 9 is Lizard. And it's hard for me to keep him at number 9. I love Curt Connors. I think he's a great character. The whole idea that he's introduced without the hand, and believes in doing what reptiles do and regrowing the limb, I think it's awesome. It's another one because it's cool how close he is to Peter in all of their movies. So in Spider-Man,
Amazing Spider-Man. Yeah.
Amazing Spider-Man, yeah. Sure. And I love Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, but how much he looks up to Dr. Connors, and I love that Dr. Connors is Nigel, the kicker from the football movie The Replacements. I think that's so funny, the different change in roles. But again, the Lizard is one of those guys, like he doesn't want to be evil. Like this just happened to him. Like he kind of poisoned himself, and it kind of goes full circle on him all the way around. He's another one who ends up making it into No Way Home. And again, I thought that it was funny, the comical side of him they brought in and the little comments they made, even though his character was relatively small, he wasn't in the movie a lot. Like when they go to the condos, he's just sitting in the back of the van. I
Right,
just
right.
thought that was kind of funny. So, but yeah, and I like the comic book side of Kurt Connors a lot too. To be honest, I love that in the comic books and in the Amazing Spider-Man show. I'm going to keep going back to that. He's the Lizard, but he's still wearing his lab coat and everything. Where in the
Right,
movies, that all breaks right off of him, which makes a lot of sense. So,
right.
my number 9 is the Lizard.
That's a good one. Now, this my number 9. I brought a book. It may surprise because I think people might, I think younger audiences probably have more of affinity to Venom. So my number 9 is Venom, and the reason why he's so low on the list for me is that I feel like they've gone too crazy with all of the symbiote characters recently. They've introduced Carnage and then all of the different symbiotes and King in Black, Queen in Black. There's all these different storylines. So it's a little overdone for me, but the classic, like when Venom first was introduced through the alien costume, that was really, amazing stuff, writing and storyline in the Amazing Spider-Man. But I think they just kind of beat it to death, more
Okay,
recently. So
that's
that's
more than
why
fair.
he slid on my list.
That's more than fair. My killer with Venom is I love Tom Hardy, but the movies just didn't land.
But
You
yeah,
know, they were all
yeah.
just a little forced. I feel like so. All right, Venom is on my list, but he's not at number 9. My number 8, I have Mysterio.
Okay.
I really liked Mysterio in the Amazing Spider-Man, the television show, because I don't think you ever saw his face. He always had on like the fishbowl, and it was always like smoky inside of it.
Right,
And a
right.
lot of the time when Peter would like look towards him or look at him, he would change the look of the smoke, and it would like be like a nightmare for Peter or something like that. It was really well done. And then I really liked the way they kind of moved him into Spider-Man Far From Home with Jake Gyllenhaal, who I thought was a great character. And I remember being super confused in that movie, being like, there's no way this guy's gonna stay the good guy, right? The whole time. And same thing, like just to show the difference in, the advanced technology and everything. Like, I don't remember what Mysterio looks like in the comic books, but again, in the show, to go from that, like, it looked like the movie, but the difference was Mysterio had like the powers in the comic, in the cartoon when I was a kid, to make people see these things and give the illusions and make you think you were somewhere you were not, like almost like a clown house. Where in Far From Home, they used technology and he had all of Tony's, um,
Drones. The
yeah,
drones,
doing
yeah. Yeah.
everything. So again,
Right.
cool spin-off, but for me, I was like, oh well, it's just not the same. Like, you don't have any powers, Jake Gyllenhaal, to say. So
Right. Right.
that's my number 8.
That's a good one. He's on my list. My number 8 is Shocker. Again, another one of those characters who doesn't have powers, superpowers, but has some technology. And again, is kind of street level where his main goal is to, rob places, basically get rich, early on when he was first introduced. And again, it's another, Spidey had to kind of figure out how to deal with him and his power set. So, and I think, just one of the classic early villains for Spidey.
Shocker was cool in one of like the Sega Dreamcast video games. He was like one of the first guys you had to fight. And like as soon as you saw his hand start winding up with electricity, you were like, what am I supposed to do? It's sad that they never got him into a movie. I thought he'd be a really great character to get into a movie because I liked him more than I liked Electro.
Right. They introduced well, in the Homecoming, was it Homecoming? No, it was the Vulture movie. They have the Shocker's equipment, but they don't really introduce him as the Shocker, right?
Yes, okay.
They had his like gauntlets that he
Yes.
wears, but they never really, that wasn't the Shocker, right? It wasn't like,
Gotcha. Okay, I
yeah.
forgot about that. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, good pick. I wish I knew a little bit more about him. Like I said, always a cool character. In the comic books, did he wear the mask?
Yes.
He
Yeah.
did.
So he
Okay.
was always in this, typically like this brown and yellow.
Okay, he is wearing it. Cool. I couldn't
Yeah.
tell.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Nice, good pick. My number seven. My number seven comes from a totally different set of movies. Is The Spot. I like The Spot a lot. I don't know if he was in any comic books ever, but I thought in the Miles Morales Spider-Verse movies, he's a cool character, man. And it's cool how like he keeps the chase going with Miles, and Miles is going through the spots trying to keep up with him, and the control and the power he has. I just think the whole thing is really awesome. I like the basic look. I like the almost like Rorschach mask look of just the white suit with the black holes on it. I think the black spots. I think it's awesome. I love, like I said, the chasing scenes with them is just so funny because Miles just never gives up on anything. I feel like in a chase, and sometimes it turns against him, but I like The
Yeah,
Spot a
that was
lot.
done really well. Like the animated, like it. I think to try to pull that off live action, I think would have been tough. But the
Mhm.
animated version was really good, and he did. He was in Spider-Man. It was Spectacular Spider-Man, I think, mainly the Spectacular series
Okay.
that he dealt with. Spider-Man fought Spot.
Cool. Another thing for me with Spot is I believe he's one of those lower end villains, but it's cool they introduced him into these Spider-Verse movies because you're like, oh, who is this guy? And a lot of people don't know who Miles Morales is. Now they probably do, but I thought it was cool that you took Miles Morales and you took another villain that we didn't exactly know. You took a kind of unknown Spider-Man for fans and an unknown villain and mashed them together, and you made a great rivalry out of it. I love it.
Yeah. No, that's true. All right, my number 7 is Electro. So, and I brought this actually happens to be his first appearance, but and it's funny, like in the comics, you don't think his costume, at least I didn't when I first read it, that it was too goofy. But I mean, I think to see this in live action, I'm glad they kind of homaged it a little bit in No Way Home, but I think it would have been kind of really goofy to have Jamie Foxx dressed up like that.
Yeah, it's a tough spot. I like that Max was just this corny dude in the Amazing Spider-Man 2. It was sad it was like his birthday, and then he falls into the eels, and then Oscorp doesn't even care. They pretend it didn't happen.
Right.
But it's cool that like in that movie, Peter tries to say, I'm like, oh, hey, Max, it's your birthday, right? And he's like, you remember me? And still just ends up evil. And the whole thing with the power plant towards the end was fantastic. Jamie Foxx, I feel like, plays a lot of decent roles for a guy who I didn't think would be a good actor. And I really liked him at that role, to be honest.
Yeah. No, he didn't. That was, he played that really well. And I don't think he got, I don't think people talk much about that role and his, his acting either.
Yep, for sure. I like in No Way Home when he's wearing the meter and Tom Holland Spider-Man puts it on and he's just like, just leave that alone. You see it dialing up, and all of a sudden he's like, I feel weird. And I was like, oh no, this is where everything's gonna go south.
Yeah, it's gonna go sideways.
Yep, this is it. My number 6, and I don't recall a lot of fights between them. I'm sure there's a bajillion of them. My number 6 is Carnage.
Yeah. Okay.
Again, for me in the movies, Carnage didn't land. Those Venom movies just didn't do it. That second one was kind of cool as like a horror-ish movie, and the whole idea of he's at what's the name of that asylum he's in? Do you remember what it's called?
Oh, I'm drawing a blank.
Is it Ravencroft?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, he's in Ravencroft. Woody Harrelson, I think, is a great actor. I think he plays like the perfect psycho, so I liked him as what's his name? Cassidy?
Yes. Cletus Cassidy.
I knew it was with a C.
Yeah.
I just like how like not everybody gets Carnage like everyone gets Venomized. I feel like it doesn't happen a lot. I read the Absolute Carnage series, which I thought was really cool. In the comic books, I just think that like the psycho side of Carnage is cooler than the overall villain side of, not cooler, but like is just a lot different of a side than what Venom is, where Venom will have the symbiote take over everybody, but Venom will just physically a brute, where Carnage I don't really see that way. Carnage is just a lunatic, like, and then I like Scream and all of those, Rage, all of those guys are really cool too, the spin-offs. So like I said, I just wish we got a better portrayal of Carnage in the movie, but I do think it was cool how at the end of the first Venom movie they kind of leaked that Carnage would be there. I just didn't think there was going to be a second Venom movie or a third after that first one.
Right.
So, what do you got for number 6?
6, I'm gonna go with that you had Mysterio.
Nice. Is that his first issue?
No. He's much earlier. He's in like early sub 100 ASM.
Oh,
But this
wow,
was
okay.
this is a Todd McFarlane cover.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
But yeah, Mysterio was always fun to read because you didn't know what was real and what was reality and what was illusion and being made up. So, and again, he's not a superpower. He doesn't have superpowers. He's using sleight of hand, illusions, magic. Not real Doctor Strange magic, but sleight of hand and things like that. So, and again, it was like Spider-Man had to figure out how to deal with it. Like, how do I is this real? Is it fake? And how do I get over it mentally and deal with it? So yeah, and who doesn't like a smoky fishbowl on some guy's head? I mean,
Yeah, of course. It's cool that so far I feel like your list is all Spider-Man villains who, besides Venom, are like clever ways to defeat them. Sandman with the water,
right.
Electro, kind of the same concept. Mysterio, like you said, is just figuring out like, oh, how do I get around figuring out what's real and what's not? So
Yeah, I think, and I think that's why they introduced some of these characters early on with them, is like, it was more of a challenge of, Spider-Man being a new being, a new, superhero. How does he deal and figure these other guys out? So
yeah, not for sure. All right, we're getting into the top 5. We're rolling. My number 5 is Kraven the Hunter. I really liked Kraven. I thought that in the comic books, he was really cool from everything that I had read. And I had read a series where he had to chase Rocket Raccoon as well, which was fantastic. I like in the fact that the Kraven the Hunter does not like choose that he's just going to like shoot Spider-Man. Like, he's going to hunt him and he's going to make him miserable. He uses his spears, his swords, everything he does. And I remember from the Amazing Spider-Man cartoon, which I believe was drawn off of the comic books as well, is he wears like that orange vest, poofy vest with all the fur on it. I thought that was a really cool look.
Yeah.
I didn't hate the Aaron Taylor Johnson movie. I thought concepts of it were pretty cool. I didn't think it needed its own movie. That's just me personally, but and I thought he played a good role. But again, I like the whole idea of he's almost like a Wolverine in a fact, where like he kind of just sniffs and he's like, oh, Spider-Man's that way, where Wolverine has chased his enemies by same thing, scent of smell. But again, I just think the brute force, the traps he sets on Spider-Man, like he'll just be swinging and suddenly he's caught. Like, I think the idea of him just catching Spider-Man is so cool because he's more of like a torture guy. He's not just going to go out there and kill you. He's going to get you and then he's going to make it miserable. And I always remember Spider-Man in those episodes were like terrified. And you were terrified because like, what's this guy going to do to him?
You didn't know what was coming next. Yeah.
Exactly.
It was about the hunt, right? Yeah. It was more about the, the hunt and tracking Spider-Man and trying to figure out ways that he could trap him. So
yeah, and it was crazy too because he always carried that like knife in his thing, and every time I see those knives, I can't remember what it is. It's like you keep it in your side pocket. It's rather long. It's almost like a machete. But anytime I see this, I'm like, these guys are bad. Like, I don't want to see what they do with this thing. So
like, Crocodile Dundee knife.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Well, I think this is the first time on our list. My number 5 is Kraven.
Oh, no way. Okay.
Yeah. And really for some of the same reasons, because, like I remember reading the Last Hunt storyline when it came out in the 80s. And it was like, to see this guy with this big vest with the, the lion fur and in New York City was like, this is like totally out of place. But then, like you said, hit the hunt and the traps. And he was really just trying to, he wanted to take on the, the biggest foe and try to take him down. He just basically wanted to, Spider-Man was a worthy challenge and he wanted to try to, take him down. And then just really that storyline got dark because he's just, He's buries Spider-Man alive, and it's just not something you would expect from a Spider-Man story. It really took a dark, it's kind of like you mentioned with Carnage. It's kind of a horror type storyline, which is, he's just crazy. He's a serial killer. So, Craven's Last Hunt was really kind of a little bit out there for your typical Spider-Man story. So that's why I have him at 5.
Yeah, I think it's cool that you mentioned it's like this guy running around the city and he's using like almost like I feel like you would say like old school hunting techniques. Like he's with like blow darts and things like that. Like
Right,
in the city, like that's crazy. But I like that we match. I don't think I've matched with anybody yet on the show with any of the numbers. So cool. My number 4 is Morbius. I love that Morbius comic book cover, the first one. I only have the facsimile again. And Morbius, again, in the cartoon for me, the animated series, he was just another troubled guy. And I don't remember how exactly he might have got bit by a bat or something like that. I don't 100% remember what happened to make him that way. But he was in love with this girl and he wanted to keep her protected. And anytime anything bad would happen, he would suddenly turn into the vampire, if you call it, of Morbius. And he was the first, I remember he was like the first hand-to-hand combat villain in the animated series that outpowered Spider-Man.
Right.
Because in that show, like Spider-Man was pretty jacked. He was a bigger guy. He wasn't like your small Tobey Maguire, your thin Andrew Garfield, and your small Tom Holland. He was like a pretty muscular looking guy. So for him to be physically beat hand to hand, it was kind of crazy because Morbius would just pick him up, throw him around. And then I remember he ended up like swooping in and taking MJ. And that was, I think, like the first time I really felt like, oh crap, MJ is in trouble in this show.
Right.
Like, what is Peter gonna do to save her? So I really like the art style of Morbius. I think he's one of those really well drawn characters. The movie was awful, I have to say. Like, I watched it. I did not like it, but
it was. I thought it had like the setup of how he became, and the reasons were good, but then the villain wasn't very good, and he was almost. I guess he was kind of like an anti-hero, or
right.
Yeah, and that's kind of
Those anti-hero movies just don't always land with me, which doesn't help. So, but yeah, I'm a fan of Morbius.
That's a good pick. Now I picked for my number 4 is the Lizard. So what you had a little bit earlier.
There's the lab coat. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he still stays in his lab coat throughout. Yeah. But just again, one of those like science, smart guys, and has a connection with Peter as Peter, and then now Peter has to deal with him as Spider-Man in the Lizard form. And just one of like almost like misunderstood because he's trying to regenerate his arm, and then he turns himself into this creature, but he's got a wife, he's got a family, so there's like that emotional hook with him, and that the fact that Peter knows him as Kurt Connors, but now he's got to beat him as the Lizard. So it's definitely one of those, and just classic one of the classic early villains for Spider-Man too. So
it's crazy that like when you go through these lists as we get closer to the end, like I realize a lot of these villains are like people Peter looked up to. So it sucks that he had to go through and fight all of them, but that's how they get introduced is, it's somebody who's like in the same field of interest he is with the science stuff. And then they just go crazy with some kind of an accident. And I mean, that's how it happens. So
yeah, I guess stay out of the science lab.
Exactly. My number 3 is Green Goblin. The great Willem Dafoe, probably one of the best villains in movie history ever. Like, probably top 5, top 3.
And perfect casting, because he's just like, in one frame you think he's he looks fine, and then there's like then he's crazy. Like it's just
it's insane. The whole thing where in the first Spider-Man movie where he's he sets himself up again, and then when he starts going into the voice and when he does that little smirk, all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, that's the Goblin.
Right. Right.
which happens in No Way Home. I truly believe that the Green Goblin is Tom Holland, Spider-Man's biggest enemy. And I feel the same way for Tobey Maguire as well, of course. And again, it was a guy he looked up to. It was a guy who was like a father figure to him. So again, people that were close to Peter end up turning bad. It sucks. I remember when Marvel Legends released the helmet of Green Goblin, I was in Disney and I saw it and I was like, oh no. And I have a bunch of those and I was like, I can't buy this one, but this one is so, so great. In Spider-Man 2, when they do the whole Thanksgiving scene and Peter's bleeding and the blood drops to the floor and then he just disappears. He's from the ceiling. It's so good. And the Green Goblin is just obsessed with Spider-Man. Like he just wants to kill him. The glider is beyond awesome. The pumpkin bombs are fantastic. I mean, they've hurt so many people in Peter's life. When he leaves him for Harry to find, and he is, oh no, I'm sorry, Doc Ock leaves him for Harry to find. But when you realize in the first movie, Green Goblin notices Peter, like that's crazy to me that in that first movie, I'm like, oh, these guys are supposed to be kept secret. And I was like, and now it's not a secret. And then you realize the danger and why all these heroes in our lives want to keep their identity secret is to keep the people around them safe. And that's what happens. Aunt May's house gets blown up. Like it gets crazier and crazier. Aunt May in No Way Home dies. Like it's crazy how this guy just goes after everybody. I never thought in No Way Home that Tom Holland was going to spike the glider into him, but there was a part of me that was like, all right, do this, let it happen. And Toby's saving him. I was like, no. But then he stabs Tobey Maguire, and I'm like, oh, kill this guy. Who cares?
Yeah.
I don't know. That whole ending to me kind of like threw the movie off a little bit. But again, I just think, like you said, the perfect casting, a true genius of the craft in every movie he's in. Because there's like sides of Green Goblin in him in all of his movies. If you're asking me, like he does a movie called The Lighthouse, where he's kind of just like losing his mind, like him and Robert Pattinson, Man a Lighthouse, and it's just so cool. So
I haven't seen it. Yeah, I have to check that out. Yeah, because he just the way he can like turn it on, just from being straight normal and then just crazy. It's just like that's pretty good.
And his crazy is terrifying.
Yes. Yeah, you definitely feel like unpredictable. You don't know what he's going to do.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, my number 3 is a goblin, but not the Green Goblin. It's the Hobgoblin. And the reason I have him so high on my list is I was reading when they first introduced. So I was reading Amazing Spider-Man when they first introduced Hobgoblin, and at the time they were publishing Spider-Man once a month. I mean, we've had him published almost sometimes Amazing Spider-Man's been published 3 times a month.
Oh, wow.
Right now it's like twice a month. They kind of changed the frequency. But back in the day, in the 80s, when they introduced the Hobgoblin, it was such a cliffhanger because it was this new goblin villain, and so you had the history of the Green Goblin, and it was the cliffhanger every month. Who is the Hobgoblin? Who is he? Who is this new villain? And so it was such a good story to read because, like I said, it was like cliffhanger after cliffhanger. Too late, it finally revealed who he was.
Mm-hmm.
But again, he's got similar technology to the Green Goblin. He's got a glider, he's got pumpkin bombs. So part of that, makes him, a tough foe. But then just the mysterious, nature of it, like who is he? And what's his motive. So that's he's my number 3. That's why I have him so high.
Cool. So you had to wait like month by month and then got left on another cliffhanger.
Yes. Yeah. It was probably over like 3 or 4 issues. So like it was like a 3 or 4 month story. Like
that's cool.
He was fighting, but you didn't know who he was, and they were giving you some clues, but you didn't know who it was. So
gotcha. Okay. Did they do the whole Harry Osborn thing like they did in the movies or no?
They do eventually in like the Hobgoblin storyline. Like there's been the original Hobgoblin is Roderick Kingsley. He basically stumbles across an old stash of the Green Goblin
cool.
stuff, equipment and formula, serum and things like that. And so, then over the history, there's been like multiple people who have been,
Gotcha.
who've kind of donned the costume of the Hobgoblin.
Cool.
So yeah.
Hobgoblin, his face isn't a mask, right? Like he's actually got that goblin look to him. Am I correct in that?
Early on, it was a mask, but
Oh,
then
wow.
there's been some that have kind of transformed into that,
Okay.
like disformed. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
He was a cool like Halloween character because he had like the orange hood and everything too, right?
Yes. Yeah.
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 Cool
Orange.
character.
Yeah.
Great
blue.
looking character. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. My number 2 is Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin. This was the guy who, I don't know how he ever ran in the comic books with Spider-Man. From what I know growing up, he's obviously Daredevil's biggest villain, and I
Right.
think that role is fantastic. But in, again, the Amazing Spider-Man, the cartoon, Kingpin like lived in this tower that had like it looked like the Avengers Tower basically, but it had like, and it had the helipad landing area, that giant circle outside of it, and he had these 2 big glass doors, and they would always open, and there'd be every villain came through Kingpin, every single one of them in that show.
Right.
And I was like, this guy is the absolute boss of villainy. He had the cane with the diamond on top. He was a just massive human being. The way he was drawn, he did the same thing he does in the Daredevil show. He's just so proper talking, and you were like, I want to hate this guy, but like I also want to, go ask him to make me some dish. Like it's crazy. So yeah, it's cool that like for me growing up, because again, I didn't start reading comics until I was like 21 or 22 years old. So for me, Wilson Fisk was the guy like where all the villains came through there. You didn't know why or how he hooked up with them, but he always was on the hunt for Spider-Man, and he always had someone else doing his dirty work. And that's when I first realized like, oh, like this guy is the guy, because a lot of the things going on, I'm like,
kind of the mastermind. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Because a lot of these other guys just go and get Spider-Man that are on our list so far. But Kingpin was like, no. You're going to bring him to me.
Right.
So, and again, it was cool. He wore like, I think he had like a purple collared shirt or like a sweater and just a big white.
Yeah. The white suit.
The white suit. And I was like, this is a crazy look. Like, and he was so big, you thought it was stupid. And like, he was drawn with such a big face. But again,
I always kind of think of him as like a sumo wrestler.
Yes.
Like he's that, he's not muscular, but he's like solid.
Gotcha.
Like
okay.
And he's got that strength. But
yeah.
That's kind of always thought of him as like, you're not going to get past him. He's just, he's too big.
Yeah. Looking back now too, I look at like cartoons and I think of like Batman the Animated Series. They didn't have a lot of continuous episodes. Like every episode was kind of something new. And in Spider-Man, it was the same way, don't get me wrong. But Spider-Man always led back to Kingpin, and I always thought that was really awesome.
Right.
Was he introduced? Do you know, was he introduced in the comic books through Spider-Man or no?
He was, yeah. So
wow.
Amazing Spider-Man 50 was the first appearance of Kingpin. So he was really a Spider-Man foe, he was, he's the crime, he's one of the crime lords of New York City. So it kind of made sense that he became Daredevil, as well. But yeah, he was a big part of Spider-Man early on and still is today. Like you said, a lot of things kind of, if you're, involved in crime in New York City, somehow the Kingpin's involved, right?
Gotcha.
So,
cool.
But yeah, he was one that didn't make my list and I was struggling with him because I figured I had to put him on somewhere. But I think, more people know him as Daredevil, as a Daredevil with the Daredevil series, recent TV series and things like that. So that's why he didn't make my list. But number 2 for me is Doc Ock.
Cool.
So just for me, again, just like we've talked about, somebody Peter looked up to, a very smart scientist, somebody Peter's worked with. And then now the flip side, when he goes evil, now he's got to deal with him. And he's, pretty, the tentacles. And like, I think the Alfred Molina portrayal in the movies was like perfect.
Yep.
Spider-Man 2, Tobey Maguire, that whole, fight scene that they have in the bank and then up on the building was just like, you couldn't have asked for a better, live action version of Doc Ock. So, and it's just funny. I think the way over the years, the way people like will draw him, with like kind of the flat top hair and the glasses and
Yeah.
sometimes he looks like Roy Orbison, or like he
Uh-huh.
looks like a beetle, like different ways that people draw him is just, it's just funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, just one of those guys who um, he just continues to give Spider-Man problems.
Yeah. It was cool because you look around, like nobody uses an octopus as a villain. So it's cool that like
Right.
Spider-Man is like the solo guy. Like everyone has a bird villain and everyone has like an element villain, but nobody has an octopus villain. So
Right.
I always thought that
Tentacles.
was really
Yeah.
neat. Yeah.
Yeah.
My number one, and if people know me, it's Venom. I love Venom. When I got back into comics and I went into this small comic shop in Selden, I was like, I was just going up and down the aisles and I was looking for anything issue number one to get into. And it was the first time I saw it was Venom, and it was the Lee Price run. And it was only like 5 or 6 issues, but I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I was like, wait a second. Growing up, Venom was always Flash Thompson or Eddie Brock. And I was like, so this is kind of a neat turn of events for me. So I ended up reading it and I loved it. And then that ended where I believe it was Flash Thompson. I'd have to look like deeper into it. Is working with like the military, and he takes out this guy Lee Price, and he takes the symbiote, and it goes full circle because he used to have the symbiote, and then eventually it ends up back with Eddie, and it runs into that huge long story. I love the idea of people being getting the symbiote and becoming venomized. I thought that was always really cool. I didn't love the venomized comics, but I loved the covers. I like the idea. I mean, I have a venomized Groot Lego that I have sitting up there. It's really
Yeah.
cool. The whole idea of being put into this thing and then becoming who he is, and especially because Venom or Eddie Brock, whoever it is, has to learn how to use the suit and use the symbiote to their advantage. So even Tom Hardy, like in the beginning of it, the whole being super confused and not knowing what this thing is, and then eventually by the third movie, they become closer and they know when to become one and when to stay separate and all those things.
Yeah. Kind of figuring out, right? Yeah.
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 My favorite comic issue is the one that you showed. What is that? 316?
Yes.
Uh,
316.
one of my favorite comic covers ever. It took me a long time to get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But I never got it graded, unfortunately, but I love it. I think it's so cool. I love the spider on the chest thing, which they didn't really do in the movies.
Oh
So,
yeah, that's true. That's true.
but if I remember correctly, before there was symbiote Spider-Man, Venom was there first, correct?
So Spider-Man he needs a new, he gets I forget the actual how he gets it, but it's obviously in Secret Wars.
Mhm.
They're in space, there's all the different heroes, and he obtains the costume. He needs a new costume, and he doesn't know that it's a life form at first.
Right.
And then slowly it starts to kind of try to take control of, and then he realizes it's a living thing and he needs it off him because it's trying to bond with him.
Yeah.
But it did give him initially, it gives him like a boost in his power, the webbing. He has kind of organic webbing when he's using that suit.
Yeah.
So there was definitely like, wow, is this like a new power set for Spider-Man, before you realize, oh no, this is an alien that's living, trying to,
Yeah.
use him as a host. So, but yeah, no, it was definitely, and that was like the mystery of the suit, like as it evolved, and then it turned into Venom, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think it's really cool too, looking, because from what I remember, Venom was the first like fully black suited character. So it's cool, like when you look at that cover, they use blues to contrast him and show you the different size of his muscles and
Oh,
everything.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Like
yeah.
I always thought that was really cool. The tongue,
Yeah. Like
is
the
just
highlights, you get like some highlights.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So when you look at it, it's almost like, oh, is he a dark blue? And maybe they drew him that way. Wherein it's hard to portray that in the movies. You need a lot of light to show the white and everything. So I just think
Right.
the evolution of it and being able to show who he is, because I can't imagine how hard it is to draw a black figure and then try and show some sort of shading in it or something. So it's cool
Right.
that they used highlights rather than shading to show the full look of him. So
Yeah. Yeah. No. And that, like, when you think of like standout covers, Venom, so many different Venom, or like you said,
yeah,
Venomized, other characters Venomized. Yeah, pretty stand out.
Yep.
All right. Well, my number one is the Green Goblin.
Nice. That's the spirit
So
right there.
I mean, for me, there's no other like he's been a nemesis for Spider-Man since, early on, the death of Gwen Stacy and just the craziness that he's brought into Spider-Man's world over the years. I don't think there's anybody bigger than, and he's still, today he's still a character that's heavily involved in, Spider-Man story. I mean, there's been a lot of different crazy storylines with Norman Osborn. But he just continues to be somebody who's in the world of Spider-Man and just continues to give him problems today. So
Yep.
but like I said, I think from a character standpoint, the technology, the glider, the pumpkin bombs, just really just cool and different ways that you can use them in the storylines and the like having the glider in Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire, like trying to, stab him basically with the glider,
Yeah.
just some crazy. And then, when you see that pumpkin bomb, even in No Way Home, you hear you see the pumpkin bomb bounce and then you hear the laugh. You
It's so
you
good.
instantly know who it is, obviously.
Yep.
So yeah, just very, very, very impactful for Spider-Man for me, over the years. So
Yeah. I love that he pushes Spider-Man to the limits. Like even in the first Spider-Man movie, like he's holding the kids in the trolley car in one hand and Mary Jane in the other,
right.
and he lets go of both. And I remember being like, "Oh my god, what are you gonna do?"
Yeah.
So all of those little aspects I think are great. Like you said, like he's just always like he's the true evil guy. Like a lot of these villains are evil, but they don't like do anything like super out of hand. Sometimes he always went above and beyond. So
well, it's like the Jekyll and Hyde too, right? Because he's like a different person when he's the Goblin as opposed to Norman Osborn. Although Norman Osborn is not the nicest of guys,
right?
But you kind of see the split personality between the two. So
yeah,
I think that's why he's kind of stuck around so long, is because I don't know if people feel bad for Norman Osborn, but there's definitely a human side of it as well. So
yeah, of course. I think it's what was I gonna say? Again, it's another one where I like the evolution of the character and the look. I love the purple cap and the purple suit.
Oh yeah,
with the
yeah,
green.
just the look. Yeah, like I said, and then for me too, it was like as a kid, like when I first read it, it was like the equipment, the glider.
Yeah,
who would the fact that Spider-Man can swing around. Well, now he's got this guy who can, kind of match him, with the glider.
Yep,
So,
keep up with the speed and everything. No, for
yeah.
sure. Yeah. And again, I like how they portrayed him in the Spider-Man movies. I thought like the jacked up like six-pack armor suit, I think it worked. I think it's one of those ones where it's a hard adaptation to match. So the way that they did it, I thought was great. I always thought in No Way Home, I was like, oh, maybe he'll show up in the purple, but I think they did the whole when he goes to Aunt May's like where she does the food pantry kitchen and everything like that.
Yeah.
He's in like a purple sweatshirt, and I was like, oh, cool, they're doing a little bit of homage for that.
Right.
So.
Yeah, he was like in green and purple. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But
yeah.
Great list. I like both our lists. We had a lot of the same people on it, and it's cool too because when I always try to just quickly look up a list of these people. And when I saw a lot of the list of Spider-Man, I was down to number 60, and I still knew a bunch of them. But I was like, oh, these guys aren't my favorite because they're probably one-off villains, So it's cool to see all the little things he fights. Like we always say the ground level Spider-Man fights, and then you've got the majors. And I think we hit a lot of the majors, to be honest, which makes for a great list. A great conversation.
Yeah, and there's a ton, between Spider-Man and then Batman. I don't know who they've got. I'd be interested to know who's got more villains, but it's a wide variety of different types of villains. Some of the guys were just regular guys with some equipment, and then some guys with superpowers, some guys with some guys who were crazy, aliens. So that he's they've got a little bit of everything.
Yep. Somebody who I wanted on my list, and I'm just going to ask you yes or no, is Black Cat a Spider-Man villain? Felicia Hardy.
I wouldn't consider her a villain.
Okay.
But definitely a thorn in his side for sure,
Yes.
right?
Okay. I wanted her on my list, and then I was like, nah, she's not really. I wouldn't call her a villain, like you said. She's
Right.
kind of a pain in his ass. So,
Yeah, because there's times
um,
where she's worked with him and helped him.
yeah,
Obviously she's been a love interest of his. So
yeah,
yeah, it's kind of almost like Catwoman to Batman, right?
right, exactly, right. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. Part of me is like, oh, is Catwoman really a villain? I mean, I did a Friday morning trivia where I had her on there, and I was like, I should take her off of this, but I was like, yeah, I'll
Yeah.
just leave it on.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, yeah, she's probably, that fine line, right? She's doing
of
some things
course,
that she shouldn't be doing,
yeah,
but yeah, it's tough. It's tough not to like both,
of,
Catwoman and then Black Cat.
of
So
course, yeah, no.
yeah.
Um, when you made your list, was it easier for you to go from number 1 to 10, or did you have to like go backwards?
I kind of knew right away that like Green Goblin and Doc Ock were going to be pretty high, probably one
Okay.
or two for me because they've always been my favorites. And
Yep.
like I said, I think Green Goblin has stood the test of time in the
100%.
storyline. So yeah, so then it was tough. Like Kingpin was on my list for a little while, and then I
Okay.
dropped like I was flipping back and forth with some of the guys.
Yeah.
Um,
It makes you
so
think. It makes you think because you're like, all right. I
yeah,
always like. I feel like everyone I've talked to, it's like, oh, you got like your top three or top five. You know, maybe who 8 of your guys are, and then all of a sudden you make a list, and you're like, oh crap, I got to start like rearranging numbers and moving things around. Like, so
yeah, yeah, no, and there's still, there's plenty of other guys that you could pick, but like say, Venom could be like I would expect that like a younger audience would have Venom
yeah,
higher on their list, like you did, because in impact from animated shows,
yep.
so yeah, it definitely. But I skewed more towards the kind of the classic, the
No, yeah, I love it. Yep.
yeah, yeah,
And again, you did a lot of the comic book stuff, and it's cool to see. I've never seen all those comic book covers. Most of that artwork is what was used in that show that I watched growing up every day right after school. So it's
right.
cool that I'm like, oh, cool. Like now that I know that this is where that came from. So pretty neat. And again, and then I adapt to the movies, obviously, and a lot of the video games and stuff. So it's cool how we got impacted in different fashions, but still had a lot of the same people. It just shows you that these characters stand the test of time.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, like you said, your average person, probably knows, they could probably rattle off, 10 Spider-Man villains, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Brian, what do you got coming up, man? What's going on?
We still do our live stream every Saturday, and Saturday mornings, 10 a.m. Eastern on Saturdays. And Comic Book Community Awards are live right now, so finalist voting is open. We just announced the finalists on last Friday, so you can go vote cbcawards.com and vote for all of the finalists for this year's awards.
How many times can you vote? Can you only vote the one time,
You
or
vote, yeah, you can vote once. I mean, if you have multiple emails, you can
of
vote more
course?
than once.
Cool. I love that that's still running. It's so cool. I
Yeah,
was looking at all the posts you were putting out, and I was like, this is so good. It was just such a great idea to begin with. Like,
yeah. I like the fact that I discover new channels through it myself. So
yep,
and I'm running the awards, so I've seen a lot of the channels over the years. But I can't imagine for somebody who's kind of a casual, YouTube comic book YouTube person that they probably find a lot of new channels or get exposed to a lot of new channels. So that's a good part of it. So
yep. All right, you guys, thank you for hanging out. Brian, I appreciate your time on this Tuesday morning. I will
yeah,
post the
thanks.
link for the CBC Awards down below, and I will post Brian's YouTube channel. Check both out, put on those notification bells and everything. Until then, we will see you guys next time. Everybody have a good day. Enjoy your comics.